All right, welcome back to another episode of Halal Cartels. As always, it's me, Gabe Pacheco.
And you've got me, Samir Nassim.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's been a little while, but today I woke up to the craziest story. I don't know if you saw this yet, but we're like reliving the cover of the Rage Against the Machine album. I don't know. You remember that cover?
Oh yeah, the monks.
Yeah, with the Buddhist monk who self-immolated in protest of the Vietnam War.
Yep.
And when I saw that, I actually couldn't believe that was an album cover. And then it made me like go back and research all of that time, you know? And then waking up today and seeing I'd say our comrade in the struggle to free Palestine, Aaron Bushnell, who was a U.S. Air Force member.
Yeah, an active member
of the U.S. military, walked in front of the embassy, the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C., and live streamed self-immolating in protest of the genocide happening in Gaza. And that was, watching it was just so disturbing, but also just seeing the way that like the New York Times was burying the lead.
Oh yeah, it was incredible.
By putting his name and why he did it at the end of the story, after like a full page of just obfuscating nonsense.
They were like, local men spontaneously combust near building in Washington, D.C.
Yeah. Who knows why? Who knows his name? No, and it's just so absurd when it's so clear and like undeniable which side is on the side of, which side has moral clarity, that someone would selflessly use this most extreme act of protest against, a global injustice, a crime against humanity. And he wasn't Muslim, he wasn't Palestinian, he doesn't have like tribal skin in the game. He is in fact, it is the guilt of being in the armed services and seeing with clarity exactly what our country's participation in this is.
100%.
So to see somebody who's like, and I think no matter what Americans see on like social media, you see like Muslims are already so dehumanized, right? Like,
oh, yeah.
Brown people are dehumanized. It's the same as like kids in cages. It's the same as the immigrants. But to see like your own, right? Your own like G.I. Joe, Captain America, like a white man going out and doing this. And I just want to like, honor Aaron Bushnell by speaking his name on this podcast.
Yeah, 100%, because they're going to do their best to bury him. And so what I think for the listeners also is really important to know is that back in November, even, I think, a woman set herself on fire in front of an embassy, in front of an Israeli embassy in Atlanta, I believe. And she was never covered by the mainstream media. They buried it as fast as possible, and it was just outrageous to me that they never talked about it. And still to this day, if you try and look it up, aside from the actual incident itself, it's not mentioned anywhere. No one tried to dig around and find out why, who was she, why would she do this? Because it is synonymous with Vietnam when you look at it. Like, it's a highly unpopular war. It's so many people speaking out about it. Every day there's protests, and they're trying to draw away from the synonym of Vietnam. Like, what does winning mean in this instance? There's no winning. And so what they're just doing is terrorizing people. It's just like Vietnam. It's just going to lead to an inevitable, well, we're pulling out and leaving everything in shambles.
No, and the video is crazy because what you also see are there were people trying to like put him out, extinguish the flames, but then there was
Yeah.
also a police officer right there holding a gun to his burning up, charring body while he's writhing on the ground in agony, as though this person who has just lit himself on fire is somehow a threat.
Right.
And I'm like, awesome, this is great. This is the only training that police officers get in the academy is to
Just draw your gun quickly.
yeah. What's the situation?
You're right. It's so nuts. He goes, what he's trying to give him, I'm giving you lawful order. It's like, are you out of your mind? This guy's on fire.
Yeah.
And then the EMS guy is like, I don't need guns. I need fire extinguishers.
Yeah, man. So, again, the uselessness of police officers and how they're a threat to everyone, including someone wearing a uniform, right? This is a guy wearing the uniform of the Armed Services of the United States of America who is clearly in a state where he needs someone to help keep him alive. And the only thing that this cop can do is pull out a gun on him.
It's absolutely. I mean, the cop was probably so bummed out that he didn't get a chance to shoot him, too. He's like, I had my chance and I missed it. Once they're like, I need a fire extinguisher. He's like, wish you didn't say that. I was about to unload my clip. Sure. Yeah, man. Well, I'm glad that you spoke his name because it's exactly that. They're going to try and bury it. They're going to try and graze over it, pretend it was no big deal, but it's massive because it's everything you said. It's a member of the armed services saying, hey, I know what's going on, and I'm going to sacrifice my life in order to bring attention to this genocide. It needs to end. And, speaking of up in flames, Vice Media, my old employer.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
This weekend. I remember that. I remember that place. I remember hearing about it. This weekend was a big sort of farewell because last week I got a hot tip from a friend of mine who, worked there up until about a year ago, that they were about to turn off the entire website and just like shut down everything. And the entire archive of stuff that people I knew for, a decade plus had worked on was all just going to go poof. And so everybody was losing their mind trying to archive it. Something that a lot of people don't think about too is, hey, what happens when you write for a publication or you do something and then they turn that content off? It's gone. Like even YouTube videos that you appear in, or you know what I mean? Like whatever content, it could just go away entirely. And all of a sudden it's like it never happened, right?
Or somebody hijacks your IG account. Had that happen to a friend.
Delete everything. And then they upload that one photo that's like, I've been making a lot of money on crypto.
Yeah, dude. So and then you're lost. Every photo from all the quinceañeras you went to, all the bar mitzvahs you went to, all the finally getting to break fast at the end of Ramadan parties, all of the Indian wedding photos where you do like one wedding for your American friends and then you do a second wedding the next day, the Bollywood dance numbers. Kaput.
Gone.
You got to put everything on an HD hard drive, baby, or 2 or 3.
Yeah, literally. You should back stuff up because this is a great example of that. But you're right. The Instagram hijacking, they're so ruthless. They delete all of your photos and put up like that one photo. And then they like reach out to everyone in your DMs. And it's like all of a sudden they're like, hey, what's up? I know it's been a while. Hey, so I have a great opportunity for you to invest in. You're like, hey, we haven't talked in 5 years. But so it's clearly a scammer. But I'm always like threatening their lives. I'm like, I'm going to trace your IP address and I'm going to come through and get you Liam Neeson style. I'm going to rip your throat out.
That's right. You're like, I've got a special set of skills.
Exactly.
I'm going to find you and all of your Romanian hacker buddies.
Yeah, I'm like, I have a bunch of gift cards. Just meet me at Washington Square Park by the fountain. But so they were like threatening to take down the whole site and stuff. And It's just because they drove it into the ground. And so the next few weeks, you're going to hear a lot more about this. But what an amazing example of a place that was completely ruined by greed and avarice. And one thing I will say is there were so many good people that worked there that it's depressing. It's insane that they were all swindled one by one. Everyone left, at different times, but there was just so much talent, so many amazing people. And meanwhile, there were so many buffoons who were in leadership positions. So it was like an army of people doing amazing work. Even Vice News broke some big stories, was very credible and involved in good journalism. And then all of a sudden, they just keep shuffling weird execs around and getting new people in who are making obnoxious sums of money, like $500,000, $800,000, and doing nothing but ruining everything. There's one anecdote that I thought was incredible, which was one of the quote unquote leaders of the company. This is, more recent, like in the past 3 years, was like, hey, we need to get involved in AI and all this other shit. We just bought $800,000 worth of land in Decentraland. And at the time, there was 14 people in Decentral.
Wait, is Decentraland like a virtual kingdom? Is this like a World of Warcraft?
It seriously was. And it was being, posited as the next big thing. Oh, everyone's going to be in virtual reality, chilling in Decentraland. And, they would have EDM concerts there and stuff, and brands would spend millions of dollars. It was the ultimate grift. It was just insane. It made no sense. You know how when you're our age and you hear something fucking and completely asinine,
and they're like, we're going to have 170,000 people watch DaBaby in concert in Decentraland.
That's literally it. But then only 170 people show up, and it's virtual, and it just makes no sense. They're like, we paid $1.8 million to DaBaby to perform to 170 people, and tickets were free. The math just makes no fucking sense.
But do they have like little avatar, like SimCity avatars walking around Decentraland?
This is what I understood was you have your own like weird avatar and you're walking around in this virtual world, and then you go to, it's straight up, you're just in a video game, but it's virtual reality, I guess.
Well, during the first shutdown part of like 2020, there were a bunch of virtual spaces that stand-up shows would exist in. So I did do a couple shows in these like what looked like Toe Jam and Earl Sega Genesis video games. That's like what it looked like, and there would be a little avatar of you walking around. I'm having PTSD flashbacks to this time of being forced into virtual spaces. But and then you would walk to like a little stage, and there would be you on a little stage, and we would type in like, hey, everybody come to the stage area, and then all the little avatars would walk over and you would do stand up to them, but like as a video game character in a little SimCity world. And it was, I mean, obviously completely the worst. Like if you can walk, if you're not a paraplegic, there's no reason to ever be in a space like that.
Even if you are a paraplegic, just have an accessible stage and just roll out on there.
That's right. Yeah.
And just tell like Stephen Hawking style jokes like through the computer.
Sure. Or just live a life. Go outside if you can.
Yeah. I mean, they really jumped the gun on all that shit. They were like, that's it. The future is now. Everybody wants to live in a virtual world. And the thing about that, actually, that just really boggling my mind and realizing right now is they're making the real world so hellish and so nightmarish to live in. Unaffordable, full of violence, just zero red lines. And so what are they actually trying to do? Corral us into fake, augmented, and virtual reality spaces where we can ignore the disgusting brutality around us and live in these bullshit fucking virtual experiences, which I'm not about, Call me a Luddite, but
sure. You're not like Google Glasses pilled yet?
Yo, those stupid Apple glasses that people are driving around with on. is
Yeah.
insane to me. They're air typing emails and driving their car with goggles on.
I just imagine like a future where we're in Teslas that are auto-driven Teslas, but we lie down in them like they're our coffins, and we just have the Apple glasses on, and we're just zoned out, jacked in these Apple glasses, being carried around in these coffin trucks from point A to point B, and then you just get elevated to like a rooftop bar, where then you can look out, if you're like one of the wealthy, over, you know, the dystopian city from the top of your roof.
And because you're looking through the goggles, it looks beautiful, but if you take the goggles off, it's just devastated and destroyed, and there's smog everywhere.
A lot of haze.
I mean, I love the cattle car transport coffin thing, and it just has a plug-in for the back of your head, just like the Matrix. And they're just feeding you through the base of your skull.
Oh, dude, no, you're being fed rectally, bro.
Yeah, you're fed rectally. You shit through your mouth and you're fed rectally. I mean, I'm telling you, we're not that far off. Because these tech guys, they love the idea. Now they've implanted a chip, and they did that Neuralink chip, Elon Musk, in somebody's head.
God.
Yeah. They have successfully implanted one. I just don't understand.
Who was the volunteer that they got? Was it like a prisoner? You know, like when the bodies exhibit show in New York,
volunteered.
China. Yeah, and we're like, oh, look at all these bodies that we get to look inside of now, and then it just turned out that they were all like, you know, prisoners who had been maybe executed, maybe they died of natural causes, but they just got sliced up and turned into these like 3D models for us to
bodies. Yeah, that's what it's called, right?
Boar's head deli meat. Sure.
And then they came back around with bodies too, and they were like, "This is freaks. This one contains some freak shows as well."
Yeah, and I missed that one, but sounds sounds good.
You're like, this guy has 2 dicks. You're like, oh wow, okay,
wow. And you guys didn't keep him alive and clone him. Instead, you injected his veins and arteries with some sort of like polyurethane plastic concoction
while he was alive.
Yeah,
and they're like, this is how we got this guy. He wasn't doing his free prison labor up to par, so we cut him up and put him on display for society.
Yeah,
I think it was a scientific thing. But yeah, so going back to it, Vice is no longer. They've decided, instead of having a website and having, regular reporting, etc., they killed Vice News. They killed Motherboard, I believe, and they are just going to have a channel on social media and make Instagram reels, and that's what they're going to exist as a company.
Sure. So, I mean, great. I mean, there were great people working there. Sure, like talented people. But I also never fell under the spell of like Vice being a good place to work. Like even from the beginning, it was always racist, like from day one, because Gavin McInnes was a third of it. So regardless of, and what I always found interesting was like Vice had this, like, hey, we're anti-authoritarian streak, or like we're transgressive, but because we like will boof, vodka shots, we'll butt chug vodka, but also we're going to give you the hard hitting reporting in between deer hoof reviews, and that sort of like it was baked into its origins. This like doomed to be problematic, or like it was never official news. Like you can't start a news company with a racist who's like, let's light skateboards on fire and hit on indie sleaze girls and talk about our cocaine binges.
Right. I mean, I think it's funny because when they started like the HBO show, they did some great reporting, but it's like what you said. That was focused, and that was specific, the reporting that they would do on that show. But the problem with Vice really was greed and avarice, right? Like it was counterculture. It was, I mean, there's a million problems with Vice. Like when I worked there, they were elaborate and obvious, but The thing about it was the counterculture nature, the roots of it, and that quickly was washed away and swept away, however problematic even those were. And that got eroded by them getting into bed with big advertisers, because then those big advertisers were like, here's a prime example. Hilarious story. So you remember Neil Hamburger?
Yes.
Yes, Neil.
I love Left 4 Dead in Malaysia is one of my. I've learned to love it, but man, I went to other music like way back in the day when I was first starting stand up, and I'm still buying CDs. And this like anemic, we're gonna use the word hipster, which is antiquated at this point, but somebody who like clearly hated comedy I was like, hey man, do you guys have a comedy section in here? And he's like, yeah. Oh man, my favorite comedian. This is like cutting edge. And he gave me Neil Hamburger, when at the time, obviously, I just wanted like Pablo Francisco or like David.
Right. You wanted to laugh.
I wanted like a legit comedian, or like an experience that would be like comedy for someone who didn't quite have the sophisticated palette of like, like you can't know what
punchline stuff
anti-comedy is if you've never listened to comedy. So, or it's like you can't start with noise as the music, like your first style. So, I take this Neil Hamburger home and wanted to and I listened to it, and I wanted to kill the guy who recommended it to me. I was like, I'm all about stealing music from. I never want to ever buy another piece of music again from like a store, because who knows if I'm going to be cheated out of my money.
I know, and the CDs were fucking expensive. Dude.
Yeah, dude, to pay like, at the end of the run with CDs, it was like $24, we'll say, for, something that is, that's like tangible, it's going to break, whatever. And then at the same time, Kazaa and LimeWire are coming out, and I was like, I will risk every virus.
I will burn my computer to the ground.
Yes. So
take another risk like this.
Yes. But to say that, though, I mean, Left 4 Dead in Malaysia is amazing, but it is an exercise in masochism, both for Neil Hamburger, the audience, and for the people listening, because he does the whole set in like, I don't know if it's true, but the premise is that he's doing the set in a hotel lounge in Malaysia. And so you hear glasses clinking and people just yammering in Malay, and then him dying on stage the whole time. But he doesn't stop because he's a consummate professional.
Dude, he's insane. And he had this record called was it Sad Times at Depressa's Pizza?
Sure.
And it was literally just like an audiobook of him talking about a depressing pizza shop.
Yeah.
That was like festooned with filth and stuff. I can't even. But so he did the best thing. He was writing a column for Vice, and he realized like, oh, this is becoming a corporate shithole. So he writes an entire scathing like teardown of Axe body wash like culture type thing.
Yeah.
And he cites Axe body wash. So his column goes live, and it's literally on the same day that a campaign for Axe body wash went live on the website. So Axe body wash people call up Vice and they're like, what the fuck are you doing? You put our like ads all over your website, and then you have this guy making fun of Axe body wash. So it became this huge debacle. There was this whole mess at the office. They're trying to like save it. And meanwhile, I was just dying of laughter that he did that.
Yeah.
And, I hit up Eric Andre when I worked there to write this column thing. And he wrote back and was like, fuck no, I'd never work with Vice because of Gavin McInnes. And then years later, he like straight up. But he replied to me and my copied bosses on the email with like, oh, yeah? Oh, yeah? And he was like, you guys are fucking racist. And then Kyle Kinane like was going to do a thing. I don't know. People were not very happy because Vice was exploitative. And
yeah,
but going back to it, the credibility was eroded because of that, like the Neil Hamburger type thing, where they could not manage taking the corporate money and simultaneously actually doing something meaningful. And so then it just became one trick pony, sort of like that formula of like, we ate ketamine in Malaysia or whatever type thing. And so it's just sad because the Vice show itself, and some of the campaigns that they did were really cool, despite all of that. So it was a lot of people having to swim against a crazy tide to even get anything done, and they put their heart and soul into it. And then they just had morons, like straight up grifters. It was plagued with grifters. And they just came in and were draining the shit out of it, like poking holes all in the boat. And it was a shit thing to happen to people over the past 5 years, especially so many jobs lost. But it was a mercy killing because that place was just in much shit shape.
Well, I'd say, I mean, this is also an indictment on a culture of believing in companies and corporations. They'll never save you. Your company and the brand you work for is not your family. They're not your friends. They're only places to exploit and leave as soon as possible. And the idea that Vice would ever be a place that would be like a home or good, it's like you always cover your ass. Take your work with you. Like, take your products that you make with you. And at the end of the day, Vice's job was to sell ads to Supreme and Coca-Cola. It was not to make good art or that's a byproduct of the talented people that come into that space. In the same way that like Disney probably it does have talented animators. It does have talented engineers. It does have talented, puppeteers and creative minds. But the goal of Disney is to sell a fake world and antiseptic fairy tales to, Americans.
100%.
To Disney adults and to like brainwash children.
Yeah, so, into a funnel of commerce.
What was Vice's ultimate goal? Even if it had a cool, like, Motherboard was like a cool appendage, but it wasn't the ultimate goal of like the investors or the creators.
Well, I mean, it's an indictment on the entire industry of journalism too. I wouldn't say Vice was all journalism, but the small sections that were, like, they actually took care. Like Motherboard, for example, broke some really big stories, took care to actually do the research, do the work. Well, that's all gone now. And then you have the big dogs. I mean, for example, The Intercept, I don't know if you saw about this, but The Intercept had to let a bunch of people go. And I actually thought they were fairly responsible and did the work and did the fact checking, broke big stories. They were counter to what, mainstream media is trying to publish. And so there's just an erosion of sources of where to get information. And the other big scandal this week was the New York Times, man. I mean, they...
And this is even where I'm going to like go further out and like indict The Intercept on this, because you're totally right. So first off, let's start with why we're bringing this up. So Anat Schwartz, or Anat Schwartz.
Anat Schwartz.
There's a German porn star named Annette Schwartz from back in the day, but this is Anat Schwartz.
Yeah, so if you're Googling this at home, be careful. Be careful that you don't spell it right.
Yeah. So Annette is different, but Anat is spelled A-N-A-T. And a lot of her social media presence is scrubbed at this moment. But Anat Schwartz wrote an article that was like probably, I think, at the top of the fold on the New York Times about...
It was the cover story.
Cover story. So like headline, right in your face, baby, maybe a month or two back, about the alleged rapes taking place during October 7th with Hamas, as they love to say. And so Hamas supposedly was out here just like taking its sweet time, just rippity raping everybody. And this is, of course, what you hear when you look at like the hysterical, not in a funny way, but like hysterical, like IG stories coming from Michael Rappaport or any of the few Zio people who are in all of the rest of their IG stories incredibly comfortable, like going on ski trips or hanging out by the Leaning Tower of Pisa. But then they'll constantly post stories about, how the rapes, the unforgivable rapes that they'll never get over, even though they weren't in Israel and they don't know anybody that this happened to. They're traumatized by that. Not pictures of
devastated.
Tens of thousands of like all of the photos of the demolished cities in Gaza, the ancient Christian churches being destroyed, the bloody children. None of that is disturbing, but the myth, the rumor of the rapes is such a big deal. So to end this ramble, Anat Schwartz, she was in the New York Times, one of the writers of this story that you brought up, like headline story. And it took like a month for independent journalists to debunk this story. And Jeremy Scahill from The Intercept is one of the guys, but he doesn't even acknowledge that the early whistleblowers of this were like Max Blumenthal and Aaron Mate from the Gray Zone. So like
they were on it immediately
on it. And they caught so much flack for even questioning the rape narrative.
Hardcore.
And then we look at who Anat Schwartz is, and she's like a 20-something former IDF Air Force intelligence officer / theater major who is a filmmaker, not a journalist.
Yeah, and has never published.
Never. And for some reason, this 20-something former IDF Air Force intelligence agent was given carte blanche to write a headline story at the New York Times. So, not to align myself with maybe some alt-right voices when I say the New York Times is fake news. Like, that is the most fucking fugazi, black market, like, knockoff, Airzat version of the truth.
You will get more truth from a U.S. weekly or like a People magazine than you will from the New York Times. The shit is insane. They won a Poke Award last week. I honestly thought it was a troll move. I thought the Poke Awards were like, we just want to commit career suicide and make this award meaningless to anyone who wins it next. Like next year, whoever wins it is going to say, thanks.
Well, that's when Obama won that Peace Award at the beginning of his presidency. Well, I don't even remember the name of this Peace Award that people get because it's fake.
They're like
the Nobel Peace Prize. Yes, that's
it. Yeah. They gave that to Kissinger too, so it really doesn't. I don't know if they know what peace means, but that's not probably what it means.
Back in the day, they would have been like, "And Genghis Khan, here's your Nobel Peace Prize."
They're like, "Come on down, Vlad the Impaler, you won the Peace Prize." Yeah. So, the other thing about that article that's just phenomenal is the editors. The editors involved too are all rabid Zionists. Every facet of it is wild. It essentially never gives any evidence or proof of what it purports, and that's what's crazy. Is it's just one big circle. And this article was floated prior to that at other publications, and it was essentially a nearly carbon copy. It was rife with all types of fucking unethical and sketchy and shady things. For example, they supposedly interviewed a family for this article of a woman who was dead because of the October 7th attack, and then never told her what they were going to write. And then they claimed that she was raped, even though her family never said anything like that. So they're just completely putting this on the memory of a dead person and saying, oh, she was raped, when no one ever said that. Embarrassing her family, making her family extremely angry, using her as an artifact for a false story. And then everything else was circular. Like, well, you got to believe me. There was evidence, and we interviewed like a ton of people. They interviewed people from Zaka, which was fucking insane. They're the ones who started the 40 beheaded babies atrocity. And actually, some of them are child molesters, which is another story that broke a couple weeks ago. So, it's really strange that they are using all these people to make a front page story. It's just indicative of the New York Times obviously having an agenda, but there is no fact checking. And the thing that I love the most about this, Gabe, is we talked about this on the podcast in the past, but there was a podcast on the New York Times called Caliphate. Do you remember? I think we talked about this in the beginning.
I think like way back in the day, we talked about Caliphate, and I probably listened to like 1 or 2 episodes of this back when I cared about serialized podcasts.
Right. So, dude, this I remember I would try and push you to listen to it, but then the egg was on my face because basically, when you saw the article that Anat Schwartz was part of, you're just like, and then you read it, and you're like, this just too fishy. There's something wrong with this. I mean, there's a myriad of things wrong, but when I heard Caliphate, I was like, what the fuck? The first episode. How is this person using their real voice saying that they live in Canada? You would be able to identify someone by their voice easily. And so why isn't this person in trouble if they're supposedly an ISIS fighter that's hiding out in Canada now? And it made no sense because the person was fucking lying all along. It's just like Fugazi from the get-go, You look at it and you're like, nah, that's Fugazi. And so I convinced myself it was real. And essentially, Rukmini Callimachi, who was the person who did the podcast, she knew it was fake too. And so did the fucking New York Times, but they pretended and gaslit everyone. Oh, we had no idea that this person was lying. The only reason they admitted that it was a lie was because the Canadian police were like, hey, this whole podcast is stupid and a lie because we've already interviewed this person and found out to be a compulsive liar who has a big imagination. So this is why we aren't arresting them. They're just a fucking tragic person who thinks that they're like a ISIS fighter or whatever.
We already know that they're like harmlessly mentally ill, and it's on you, the journalists, for not fact checking this, and it's on you, the editors. It's like we're living in The Wire season 5 right now.
It really is. Dude, the richest part about this though is they used to have ads where Rukmini Callimachi would talk about Caliphate while it was running and be like, this is how much effort we put into fact checking. Caliphate is meticulously fact checked. I went all the way to Iraq to like find documents to support these claims. And then it all came tumbling down instantly. And then they were forced to issue an apology and be, this was an oversight. Like, it'll never happen again. Oddly enough, the exact same thing just happened. And it was even substantially bigger because people took these rape claims and ran with them. And this was what turbocharged these IOF soldiers terrorizing people in Gaza. They were like, you're rapists. And it was like,
Yeah, because it's like a thought-terminating accusation, and it puts you on it automatically positions you as like a villain or like a sexual assault apologist if you are skeptical, but then when you look at like, okay, well, like, let's look at the people who are making these claims in this vacuum, and they are Israeli agents who are making these claims.
Exactly.
So these like supposedly neutral or objective newspapers have been infiltrated in ways where, what we like libs and MSNBC like pilled, brain rotted boomers are like, Russia interfered with the election, right? Or like, oh, that person's an agent from China. That person's an agent from Russia. And I'm like, bro, you literally have Mossad 20-year-olds that you've just given typewriters to. And you're so like, true. Run with it, baby.
Seriously. And they also must be infiltrated by the CIA. Essentially, what really occurred to me, and it's exactly what you said at the beginning of this conversation, which is, hey, not to be a MAGA person, but the New York Times is actually fake news. And it always fucking has been. I mean, dude, the Iraq War, they were the ones who legitimized the WMD like lie.
Yo, and I like a yellow caked up baddie. That's what I like.
Yellow cake up, Patty.
Yeah, shout outs to my yellow cake fans out there. You all know what I'm talking about. They're just like took like a urine cake and fucking sprayed it with like yellow.
Took a picture of it with a BlackBerry camera. Again, made it look like it came out of Iraq from like a 35 millimeter.
Yeah, man.
Insanity.
Yeah, they're like, we just have yellow cake uranium just hanging out in the middle of the desert. No big deal. So
it's terrible. Yeah, so it's the paper of record for the United States, which has a lot, to say. Like, I'm assuming that the CIA is definitely embedded in there and running the shots or calling the shots, because they have gone beyond just being shitty as a paper. At this point, they have gotten to the point where they are actively trying to prop up this genocide, actively trying to change the minds of Americans to keep them away from knowing exactly what's going on there. They half-heartedly even report on the most monumental moments of this whole thing too. And I'm trying to think of where to turn now. I think independent journalism is key. Gray Zone, for example, has all the scoops, has called the shit. Like you said, they were the first ones to call it out. It took forever even for The Intercept to really come through. In fact, The Intercept paid lip service to these accusations. And essentially, I think politically, they didn't want to get caught in the trap of, hey, I'm denying these atrocities happened, even though they probably knew, like, hey, this is Fugazi, but no one could say it. Like, I would bite my tongue whenever people talked about it, and I would want to say, hey, that's actually has no evidence, but there's plenty of evidence of children being killed and women being raped by Israeli soldiers and children being raped by Israeli soldiers. But they're
bro. Well, they post photos of themselves wearing Palestinian women's lingerie from houses that they've looted. They post photos of themselves putting women's dresses on the front of their Humvees and their tanks.
They're looting.
They're looting. They're eating the food from their bombed out kitchens while Palestinians are starving. So,
dude, and that brings me to my next thing, actually.
Yeah,
which is so crazy. So, well, sorry, finish your thought.
Well, I was just, to the point of like our American soldier who, in an act of ultimate protest, right? Again, like Aaron Bushnell is out here lighting himself on fire in protest as a refusal to join this genocide. And then you see, like, it's just so clear when you look at the optics, like which side has some like sense of moral authority and clarity and which side is full of fucking land pirates.
Yeah. They're gleefully doing the most psychotic things. I wanted to talk about this movie I saw last week, actually, because it's all very linked with all of this.
Oh, movie? Is it movie review time on Halal Cartels?
Yeah. It is.
Yeah.
Halal. So I went to go see this movie. I'd heard about it from Chris O'Coin, the homie.
Yeah.
He told me you got to go see this movie. It's incredible. And it was called Zone of Interest. And it is nominated for an Oscar. They just won BAFTA, I believe. And dude, this movie is incredible. So here's what I will say about it. The movie is about the guy who is in charge of Auschwitz. So number one, very apropos for this podcast, because I don't know if for the big like halal heads, Gabe mentioned this in one of the first episodes where we were talking about evil. And Gabe was talking about Auschwitz and how at Auschwitz they had a movie theater, they had schools, they had all these things. There's a whole society that existed around Auschwitz.
Yeah, it was a city. It was
it's not for the prisoners, obviously, right, but for the people. It was a city for the people who
staff.
Right. So this movie takes place at the guy who runs Auschwitz House, and basically the movie is about his family and his family's ambitions and his life. It's a slice of life movie, and it was just, there's so much great stuff about how it was shot, it was shot on location at Auschwitz, and it was shot with hidden cameras. So the actors wouldn't know where the cameras were placed, so that, it would give this more raw and real feel. And it took them 10 years to make this movie, but the thing about it that was so interesting was it exposed the complacency, in fact, even the ruthlessness and cruelty of this white woman who is his wife, who was looting and pillaging from the people who were in the death camp. So, when they would show up with their suitcases, they would dump their suitcases and then take all that stuff to a warehouse. And then she would go through the warehouse and just like find whatever she liked.
Like a genocidal version of Storage Wars.
Yes, exactly. And so I was watching this, and every single thing began to seem synonymous to what's happening right now in Palestine. And, it is a lot about this like feminism that we see, like these Zionist women who claim to be feminists who have no compassion for Palestinian women who are being murdered and killed in front of their children and stuff. And the same thing existed in Nazi Germany, And she acknowledges that there are people on the other side of the wall that are in a death camp, and she doesn't care. She's just like, yeah, they belong there. And this woman is like hyper ambitious and feels entitled to, this big staff and this huge garden they have and this pristine home. And meanwhile, people are dying. The one thing I thought that was really interesting is they use the sound design to an incredible degree. So it's worth watching it in theaters because the sound design itself never lets you feel remotely at ease. While they show you like pristine like countryside and these people's garden and stuff, the whole time you can hear like crying and screaming and like explosions and grizzled noise. So it's definitely worth watching. The one thing I really love about it too is that the filmmaker said, hey, this isn't just about the Holocaust. This is about now. And it's nominated for an Oscar. And I think he's even vowed to say something about the occupation and about what's happening. And so traditionally, Holocaust movies win Oscars, like unless it's like Holocaust lore, like Boy with the Striped Pajamas or whatever. It is a recipe for winning an Oscar. And this year, I wonder if they're going to try and snub it the way they try and snub things like Jewish Voice for Peace, speaking up about it and say, hey, this is anti-Semitic. Is the movie about the Holocaust anti-Semitic? I wonder if they're going to position it that way just to prevent him from drawing the parallel. But it's very much an incredible movie, and I recommend anyone go see it, man.
Yeah, so that's cool. I really do think about that. The idea a lot about being on one side of a wall versus the other, and it's universal as much as it is specifically about Gaza right now, or like the West Bank to a lesser degree, but an equally horrible degree. But it could be about anything, man. It's about like the inequities on the border between El Paso and Juarez, right? Which are basically the same city, but on one side of it, in the last 10 years, it was the cartel wars. We're killing hundreds of thousands of people just on the other side of the border. But then you come to El Paso and everyone's like, oh, it's so safe, it's so clean, but it's like, it's part of the same economy. It's just that all the economy and the economic opportunities in El Paso are a result of, the carnage that's happening in Juarez. Or likewise, looking at like San Diego and Tijuana, and everybody in San Diego is like, oh, it's so mellow here, it's so chill, it's so like the streets are so clean, everything is so orderly. But it's because like all the GIs and everybody in San Diego goes across the border to do whatever a vice-ridden thing they want to do and leave it there. So it's like it is like cannibalizing half of humanity to create this sense of order and comfort. And we all have this invisibility, right? Like even ignoring someone who's houseless while you're on the subway platform,
Yeah.
That's a micro degree, and this is just like magnifying it.
No,
out.
I completely agree. Like if you think about it, it's not even just like a wall situation. The wall is an artifact between you and like the other people, but out here that same concept exists. Like someone else is like living in extreme discomfort, and then we are living in comfort. and we don't like to have that disrupted. Like when there's like the stinky guy in the train, we're like, PU, you know. But
yeah, man. Yeah, all of us will walk by and ignore the "I'm so hungry" that's coming. That's like you might hear as a wail from down the street. It's not.
Yep.
It's not that. And when I say all of us, I don't want to indict everybody and say we're all like equally complacent, but that is in all of us. That power to ignore when we hear need or see need so clearly in front of us.
Yeah. Yeah, and then I think a lot of it comes down to like people feeling overwhelmed. Well, if I help that person, then I have to help everyone. I just can't do it. I don't have the resources. I'm just gonna ignore it and run away.
Or how about the embarrassment people feel actually being helpful? Like when somebody comes on the on the train and asks for money, and like 10 people ignore them, almost the embarrassment of that is the mirror of like the feeling of righteousness you might get from giving that person money. It is the embarrassing everyone else by breaking the pattern and the norm by actually like opening your wallet and giving them money in front of everyone else.
Yeah, 100%, man.
So
yeah, and that's like, for some reason I always get owned though. I'll be like, hey, I have like $2, and someone will be like, I was looking for $5. I'm like, damn. Okay, then. I'm like, well, here's
hey, man, you can't knock that hustle in New York, baby. Inflation.
Yeah, actually, I was on the train the other day, and these girls got on, and they both talked at the exact same time. So it was cacophonous symphony, and no one could understand what they were saying because they were both like off time. So it just sounded like a big blur. And this old black woman turns to me and goes, "What did they say now?" And I go, I honestly have no idea what they just said. And then as they approach us, they're like, pull out a book, and it's a binder with artwork in it. And they're like, we're raising money for our school by selling our artwork. Would you like to buy some? And I was like, no, I'm good. And this guy across from me, clearly on the spectrum, was shaking his head. He's like, this is going the whole time. And he goes, no. They would never they would never do this. They would never do this. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? And he goes, no. A school would never tell you to request donations on a train. No, this is a lie.
Totally. So like, it was his internal Norton antivirus software being like, this is a scam. This is a scam. Do not. I get that, dude. Mad respect.
Yeah, he was on the spectrum, and he was like, I have to call this out. Everyone needs to know they're violating the rules.
Well, since did I bring up the movie Soft and Quiet with you ever?
No.
Okay, so this is, I think it's on Netflix right now, and it can be seen as a horror movie or like a home invasion film. It is both those things, but it also is like incredibly prescient and like a great social commentary, you know. And it starts with it was written by a woman who was inspired. So it was written and directed by a woman, and she was inspired after hearing the story of the guy, the black man who was bird watching in Central Park a couple years back. And then this white woman like called the cops on him for bird watching.
Oh yeah.
Remember this? So this was
it's
like
so good because he told her to like leash her dog so that the dog didn't scare off the birds, and she just went on a rampage.
Totally. So she was like threatened, or if not threatened, like what's a word? Just
reminded of the rules.
Aggrieved, or somehow felt insulted that this guy would challenge her privilege by asking her to leash her dog, you know?
Yep.
So he questioned her privilege, and this whole thing went viral. So this writer, she wrote and directed this film inspired by this idea. And Soft and Quiet, first off, it's brilliantly shot because it's all in real time, and it all is like one camera following the action throughout. So every scene, it feels almost like first person POV in a game or something, where you're just kind of like following all of the action. And it's very intimate. It feels really like you're there while it's happening. And it kind of reminds me of like the director of like Enter the Void or Climax.
Right.
What Soft and Quiet, we follow a white woman in like sort of like a rural, suburban, maybe Pacific Northwest town. And she is a school teacher, and everything about it feels so benign. It feels so regular, so normal. But like the unease, the queasiness is just like right there under the surface as we see this very nice, well-intentioned looking white women who I've worked with in public schools, like this kind of aesthetic, the way she talks. But you then start realizing that she's like racist. You know, like you see that she's staying late with a little white boy to make sure his parents come to pick him up. And you're like, oh, that's so sweet. And then he goes, oh, by the way, the cleaning lady that was in the classroom, didn't she almost bump into you when she was cleaning up? Well, you got to go stand up for yourself. Go tell that cleaning lady to like be careful. You know, like stand up for yourself, little boy. Like you can't let these like brown women like, you know, kind of like put you in danger or boss you around. Or so you just start seeing that it's like an older white woman who's like kind of telling these little white boys to like man up, you know, not be pussies, to like, and also, but the boy isn't, he's fine, you know, but it's like you can see these seeds, like these poisonous seeds being put in his head as to how he should treat like the help. And then so then we move on from that, and she meets a bunch of other women, and it seems like for a meeting, like it's like a support group. And you're like, oh, this feels so, you know, so innocent, right? And all of their grievances initially sound like not a big deal or like universal problems. And it's great to have friends to support you with these problems. But then like, and this is the last thing I'll say about it, is like she opens up this cake that she baked, or a pie she baked for the meeting. And you've been watching her carry the pie for like the last 20 minutes. She opens the pie and everyone's like, oh, looks beautiful. Oh man, can't wait to eat it. Looks delicious. And then you zoom in on the pie and it's got a big swastika on it.
Oh my God.
So it's like a white supremacist, support group meeting. And it makes you question this idea. Like when we think about, oh, who is the alt-right? Or like who is, it's a bunch of redneck men. It's a bunch of like January 6th, you know, storm the Capitol guys. It's Proud Boys. It's whatever. And it's like, yeah, half of it is. But the other half is like a bunch of mild-mannered, soft and quiet ladies in the back making the pies.
Yep, exactly. And you couldn't have the whole society without them.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because they're having kids with fucking racist people, and then they're having racist kids, and so on and so forth. Yeah. And it's spectrum too, because like it would be a lot easier to wipe them all out if they were all just like marching in the street with swastikas on. It's a lot tougher when you think about how banal evil can be.
Yeah, man. 100%. And so that's that. Your movie review was Zone of Interest, and mine is Soft and Quiet.
Nice, man.
And
well, hey.
Well, I feel like
this was a great episode.
We did it. We're back, everybody, and we will promise to bring you more episodes at a regular clip. We got our groove back, just like Stella.
So, exactly.
So if you like this, please tell your friends, spread the word about the podcast, share the clips, leave us reviews on Spotify or on iTunes.
Yeah, we leave a little survey in Spotify too. So if you're listening, feel free to fill it out. I've done it on a few episodes now. You'll see it on Spotify. It'll ask you a question or two. And please recommend to your friends. Take a screenshot and just send the link directly to your friends to get more people to check out the podcast. It'd be awesome. And you can see me and Gabe at Funhouse Comedy Wednesday nights, 10 p.m. at Pete's Candy Store in Brooklyn. Anything else you want to plug, Gabe?
Yeah, you just follow us on me on Instagram, Gabe Pack1, GABEPAC, the number 1.
And me at Sameermon, SAMEERMON.
And it's great to see you all on Wednesdays. So, we appreciate every time Halal listeners come out to Funhouse Comedy. So, if you're in Brooklyn, make it happen.
Hell yeah. Keep checking out Halal Cartels and tell your friends. And
all right.
See you next time.
Peace, everybody.
Peace.